For a number of years, the Negro passengers on the city bus lines of Montgomery have been humiliated, intimidated, and faced threats on this bus line. Just the other day, one of the fine citizens of our community, Mrs. Rosa Parks, was arrested because she refused to give up her seat for a white passenger. Mrs. Rosa Parks was arrested and taken down to jail, taken from the bus, just because she refused to give up her seat.
The brave actions taken by Rosa Parks inspired a movement in which the African American citizens of Montgomery boycotted the city buses. Prior to the actions taken by Rosa Parks, the Women's Political Council had been focusing on the segregation of Montgomery buses. In March 1954, during a meeting with Mayor W. A. Gale, the council members of this organization described the changes that they wanted to see happen in the laws regarding the bus system. They called for the buses to stop at every corner in black neighborhoods, as they did in white neighborhoods. They also called for blacks to no longer have to pay in front of the bus, but enter from the back, and they wanted blacks to be able to occupy a seat if it were open, even if it was in the white section of the bus. Unfortunately, this meeting did not bring about any change. Due to the lack of results, Joanne Robinson sent a letter to the mayor repeating their requests and warning of a boycott if they were not met. Following these actions, 2 women besides Parks were arrested for violating the orders of bus drivers. However, none of these arrests mobilized support for such a boycott like Parks' arrest. The boycott began as a one-day event which took place on Parks' court date. After the court hearing at the Holy Baptist Church, Martin Luther King Jr., the new pastor, gave a speech to the Montgomery Improvement Association, the group that has initiated the boycott. During this speech, he inspired the crowd to further challenge segregation and continue the boycott. He stated, "We are determined here in Montgomery to work and fight until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream." African Americans were instructed to not ride the bus to work, to town, to school, or any place.
Let me ask this question. What do colored people now hope to gain by pressing the segregation fight at this time? What immediate results do you hope to achieve?
Well, we hope to achieve equal rights as any human being deserves. That's what we're working for.
What do you think the prospects are for achieving that goal?
I think we'll be successful if we continue.
How long do you think it would take?
I have no idea how long.
This peaceful protest lasted 381 days. 90% of Montgomery's African Americans refused to ride the bus, costing the bus system thousands of dollars in revenue. The majority of the citizens who rode buses prior to the boycott were African Americans, meaning that if African Americans did not ride the bus, the majority of the customer base would be lost as well. If the customers were not paying for and riding the buses, the bus system would eventually go out of business. After over a year of carpooling and walking, the boycott became a major victory for the civil rights movement. It culminated in the court case of Browder v. Gale. The 3 judges on the panel for this case were Judge Richard T. Rives, Montgomery District Judge Frank M. Johnson, Jr., and Birmingham District Judge Seaborn H. Lynn. The plaintiffs discussed the poor treatment that they had endured on the city buses. The attorney for the black plaintiffs argued that the case of Brown versus the Board of Education applied to public transportation as well as education. In the final ruling, 2 out of the 3 judges ruled in favor of the black plaintiffs. The judges waited to enforce this until the city ran out of appeals. Because of this decision, the boycott continued and the case was taken to the Supreme Court. The MIA voted to carry on the boycott until this ruling was enforced on December 20th, 1956. The day after, Martin Luther King Jr. led the black citizens of Montgomery back to the city buses where segregation no longer existed. The boycott was successful in fulfilling its original purpose, but there was much opposition to this decision.
You can never whip these boys if you don't keep you and them separate. I found that out in Birmingham. You've got to keep the white and the black separate.
The effects of the boycott go further than its immediate success in changing the bus laws. It had a large influence on the civil rights movement as a whole. It successfully challenged racial segregation using nonviolence, which demonstrated the power behind peaceful demonstrations. The Montgomery bus boycott set a precedent of nonviolence for future mass protests during the Civil Rights Movement. It was among one of the first mass protests for civil rights in the United States and was therefore an example for the many that followed it. Throughout the 1960s, there are several protests that carry out the characteristic of nonviolence used in the boycott, such as the March on Washington. During his time leading the boycott, King said, "Christ showed us the way, and Gandhi in India showed it could work." This principle was carried on throughout the movement. The success of the Montgomery bus boycott showed the African American population in the United States that they could in fact change the way that they were treated peacefully. This event gave Martin Luther King a strong start as a civil rights leader.
It has been moved and seconded that the resolution as read will be received and adopted. Are you ready for the question? All in favor, let it be known by standing on your feet.
At the time of the boycott, King was 26 and the new pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Because of King's energetic personality, commitment to nonviolence, and ability to inspire others, the MIA elected him as the president of their organization. It was in this role that he emerged as a prominent figure in the civil rights movement. The success of the boycott is largely attributed to King and his outstanding leadership skills. Richard Bailey, a historian from Montgomery, claimed that he was able to galvanize the black community and articulate the goals of the people of Montgomery. The boycott was also an essential point in King's career because he showed his commitment to nonviolence, which made him an outstanding civil rights leader. The Montgomery bus boycott was essential in the civil rights movement. It pioneered a pathway for the many mass protests that succeeded it. The boycott proved that nonviolence could be an effective tool in fighting for African American rights. In addition, it ended segregation of the Montgomery buses and gave Martin Luther King his start as a civil rights leader.